Next up on Speak to That, Alicia Morgan, STEM advocate and engineer, speaks on overcoming failure and STEM education.
Hello and welcome to Speak to That. Today's guest, Alicia Morgan. So thank you for tuning in because she's going to bless you. Alicia is an aerospace engineer, has a heart for the children. She is an advocate of STEM and STEAM, and she is going to sit here and blow your mind like she has blown mine. Thank you, Alicia, for joining in with us. You have lived an amazing life here. I mean, we're talking aerospace? Really? What happened to playing with dolls and being a nurse and being a little girl that, do all this? What happened that you wanted to get into, like, space stuff and planes, and what happened there?
Well, thank you for having me. Well, both of my parents always encouraged me. I loved problem solving. I always liked to take things apart, figure out how it worked, figure out the process, and I always loved writing. I was always a little project manager as a little kid, organizing stuff. So they put me in science and engineering programs over the summer, after school programs, academic games, chess games. They were not themselves that smart in math and science, but they made sure that everything around me encouraged that. And so I naturally, had a gravitation for that. And then I wanted to go to a historically black college, so I looked up the schools, and Tuskegee was a premier school with an aerospace program, and you know about the Tuskegee Airmen, so it's the perfect school. I went to Tuskegee, and just all around me, my parents always encouraged me to read, writing, and so there were these people that said, you can do anything you set your mind to, but you need to know what you're up against. So, and what's the best way to do that? Is problem solving, reading, make sure you're always reading, always learning, and so it was always encouraged around me. And I had a cousin that was a chemical engineer, so there was somebody in my family that was an engineer, but they made sure that I was exposed to all kinds of things, and that problem solving and reading and just figuring out how things work was something that was always around me.
So then you wasn't afraid, thinking, God, this is like mostly men in a type of area like this, and here I am, I'm a female, I'm a woman, hear me roar, I am going in there. So, no, you wasn't afraid or nothing?
Well, my parents, again, they were the training ground. My dad used to always, toughen up, it's a man's world, but you're just going to have to toughen up. Mm-hmm. And my mother would, test me to see how I react and respond to things. So they were kind of those people early on.
Really prepared you.
That prepared me. And looking back, I hated it, but I'm like, oh, you're right.
Wow.
Strong support team.
Strong support team.
So how did your life relate to the movie? What's the name of the movie?
Hidden Figures. Well, one of the main characters in the movie, Mary Jackson, was an aerospace engineer, and so that was very encouraging to see early on. This was the first African-American woman at NASA with that aerospace background. And then all of the women, through their dedication and smart. And so what they don't teach you in school is that you focus on your academics alone. But then you get into a field that's male-dominated, and then you're going to have to learn how to speak up for yourself. Now, you talked about earlier, it seems easy, but I'm also an introvert. And so I really had to learn, after having a challenge performance review, how to stand up for myself, how to separate the facts from the emotions, or, this could derail your career if you don't speak up. So at that point, when you're back against the wall, what are you going to do? You're going to have to learn how to speak up for yourself.
So true. Now, you were recently on a show called Tedx.
Yes.
And talk to us about that and how that.
So interestingly enough, the story of me going to TED, everybody thinks that you go straight to greatness. Right. Okay, so I actually tried out for a TEDx talk in different areas for about 7 times. Wow. This was the 8th time. Wow. And I reached out to someone who had done the talk before, and they said, make sure it aligns with what the theme is. And then I thought about my journey getting to where I am now, and I said I want to talk about failure. And ironically, when I talked to the organizer, I said that was one of the reasons you were selected, because nobody really talks about failure, and you're talking about women in engineering, and it's all about, when you go to school, you get a degree, you think that, okay, all I do is apply to a job, I submit my resume, I'm going to get this job. And we're living in a day and age where you got to advocate for yourself, you got to be able to speak for yourself, you got to be able to brand yourself. And for women, sometimes we're like, well, if I just work hard, somebody will notice me. And that's not what's going on now. And then part of that is that embracing a growth mindset. Okay, this time, this may work or may not work. I may fail, but like early on, because my parents said, you know, keep going, figure out, adjust, life learn. And so I wanted to just talk about failing forward. And when I did that talk, you know, when you're thinking about it, it's just you failing. Yeah. But the response has been like from all people from all walks of life to say, I'm glad you talked about failure, and especially young people who are taking assessments and tests, and they're like, I got to get a perfect score, I got to pass this test, and then life is going to hand you a failure eventually. So how are you going to embrace it? So I just wanted to show that, you know, you see the end product, but there's a process before you get there, and it's not pretty or perfect.
Right. And you handled that. You did really well on that show. I mean, it really helped me out listening to that show. It was really, really good.
And Ms. Morgan, so when you begin to talk about how it took you 7 times, well, on the 8th time you finally got it, but there's a scripture in the Bible where it says there's a season and a time for everything. Mm-hmm. So I just believe because number 7 is a number of completion, and number 8 is a number of new beginning. Mm-hmm. So I just believe that God had a special time set just for you. Wow. Absolutely. You know, to do what you did, you know, to begin. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I just feel like there was a beginning for you. Right. So I'm excited to hear. So I want to know, so what's next? What do you have coming up next?
So this summer, I'll be in D.C. There is a STEAM conference. I'm a Global Arts Education Fellow with an organization called JREV International, and JREV stands for I Dream. And so for me, this journey has been about, like, can I finally find the way where I can be creative, analytical, and engineer and a problem solver? And so this is a perfect blend. It's going to be policymakers, educators, arts educators, we're getting together to have what's the best tools for teaching and deeper learning for students, and, you know, having all these people with diverse backgrounds, how can we add this arts integration? And then as a result, an extension of this TED Talk, I'm writing a book about not fighting who you are. Okay, you can confidently be all parts of yourself. I mean, most people say, okay, you got to be either or. I went into engineering because they said it'd be more secure. I still got laid off in engineering. Nothing is secure. So why don't you embrace all parts of yourself? So this, I will no longer fight me, is going to be about embracing all parts of yourself. And how do you do that from my own personal perspective?
Okay. So when you say no longer fighting myself, is that it? So can you, if you can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So growing up, I always knew that I was creative and I was analytical. And so I really didn't know how to blend the two. I thought you had to be one or the other. And so just the journey of like, okay, it's valuable that I'm creative. It's valuable that I'm an engineer. And so actually blending those two together makes me become the best version of myself. And so that's what it's about, not fighting that.
That's good.
That is so awesome. Alicia, we actually, we thank you for coming here, but we actually want to know, how do we follow you? How do we find you? Because I want to see some more TEDx. I want to see you some more.
So hashtag is my favorite thing. So if you hashtag AM Morgan on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you can find me. And my personal website is ammorgan.net. Again, I love hashtags. AM Morgan, you'll find me.
Hashtag that.
Hashtag it is.
All right, Alicia, we thank you for coming out and visiting with us and sharing your life, your experiences.
Absolutely.
Hey, awesome job.
Right,
Look
thank
forward
you.
to seeing you out there. Hashtag.
Right.
And here we are. Speak to that, where we give
Hope to the hopeless,
Help to the helpless.
and faith to the faithless.
Hey, helpless. Speak to that. No good rings to do. Hopeless. Speak to that. I lost my man too. Faithless. Speak to that. I need answers now. Speak to that. Speak to that. Speak to that. Speak to that.